We'll get started. Are we recording yet, Kim?
Yes, yes, you are.
Okay. We don't have any attendees via the internet, do we?
Not yet. Oh,
So
yes, yes.
So periodically throughout the meeting, I will open it up for privilege of the floor for those in attendance and those that are attending by the internet. And I'll start with a privilege of the floor. Tara, do you have anything you want to add?
Nope.
Okay, moving on. Do we have a motion to approve the March 6th meeting minutes? So moved.
Second.
I have one correction. Kim, down under site design and development criteria. You kept referring to CFO. It's a C of OFO. CFO is my initials, I'm thinking.
C of,
Oh,
a C of.
C of-
A certificate.
C word of.
Okay, yeah.
So where you had CFO, it's COO. That's my only correction and. Second amendment.
I will use that.
I didn't know your initials were chief financial officer.
I'm gonna abstain because I didn't
CEO.
get a chance to read them. But, so we've had a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved.
Kim, for what it's worth, I appreciate
Yes,
getting
I
them,
did hear.
a day or so before the meeting.
Let's start with the review of the short-term rentals ordinance that we've been working on. And Doug submitted a revised red line version. And I'll open it up for comments. Feedback, any ideas, thoughts?
So the highlighted one areas in the version that you have, or if anybody needs an extra copy, I have one here, but they're the changes.
I can tell you this.
Do you have a change, Doug, you said?
The highlighted ones are the changes
Yeah, yeah,
that were made.
Yep,
Yeah.
I do have a couple of comments if nobody else has any. Going down to permit holder,
What page?
page 1.
Okay.
It's the
Gotcha.
and I just had a question. It says, the owner to whom a short-term rental special use permit has been issued. Is it the case where it will always be issued to the owner, Doug?
Would have to be the owner of the property.
So even if there's a management company involved, they're gonna do it in the name of the owner,
Right,
correct?
correct.
Okay, I
Yeah.
just wanted to check.
Because
on
the
that.
owner is ultimately responsible.
Okay,
It'd be the title owner.
And a special use permit has to go with the property,
okay,
not with the management.
just wanted to double check that.
So every application will go to the planning board.
No,
No,
None of them, yeah.
none of them will. That's right.
Well, no, but the way, no, I did, well, no, I was listening in. The town board authorizes the planning board to grant a special use permit without a public hearing. So then a ZO will do it,
Correct.
basically, okay.
Unless there's an issue.
Unless there's an issue, then it's on, okay.
So what would be the flow of an application? It would be.
Somebody would make application just like they do now, it would come into the zoning officer for review, provided that they've submitted everything that's required with this, and it's a complete application. Within 24 hours, they'd be able to pick up their short-term rental permit, use permit, and go on with life. And when there's a problem, that's when
Comes the, yeah.
it would come back around.
I have one other comment. Did you have something, Tom?
finish your,
Okay, page 3, top of the page. Do we normally ask that homes have 2 house numbers posted? And why is that necessary? Why do we ask? that?
Yes.
We do require a house number to be posted, like for 911 purposes and
Yeah.
that kind of stuff, right? Where this came from was another short-term rental law. You think about a guest who may not know the address of the house. And so the address being posted visible for the renter so that they can easily, if there's a problem, tell 911 what the address is. That's why this is different.
For what it's worth. Where I live, I see people going up and down the road trying to find their rentals.
Yeah,
Looking at mailboxes that sometimes don't have numbers on them or only have on one side. So that's a good rule.
But that also helps if they're calling 911 and they're trying to say, you know, report where they are, kind of thing.
item number G,
On the same page.
the same page. I just want to confirm. The way this reads to me, if the person doesn't have a permit and they're operating as a short-term rental, they're ineligible for a period of 1 year to obtain a permit. That's my concern. And I think what the intention is that if it's brought to their attention that there is a short-term rental ordinance, they have to comply with it and then they're okay.
But if they choose to ignore that, then
Then the penalties go into
Once it's
place.
been revoked.
So is this language reflect that?
yeah, because there's
To me, it says any person violating the provision and they're conducting a short-term rental are deemed ineligible from receipt of the rental permit for a period of not less than 1 year.
so on
But-
I,
Yeah.
on I,
Mhm.
grounds for suspension, revocation upon evidence of violation. Including, so that includes operating without. Basically the permit, right? So this language is intentionally strong in here, I think. From our previous conversation, right? Now. Code enforcement, or in this particular case zoning. In any time, they notify. What's called a notice of violation, order to remedy.
Yeah.
And they can remedy by making application, right? So
Correct.
that would be in the order to remedy. If they go on to choose to ignore that, this is where this kicks in, but that would be basically the planning board, right? So any short-term rental permit revoked by the planning board shall be ineligible for a period of not less than a year.
Maybe we should put I before G. So that, because that G is basically about when you're revoking it, what happens, and I is about how you would get it revoked, so.
I'm almost wondering. I get what you're saying, John. I definitely understand what you're saying. So. The part that says, and shall be ineligible from receipt for a period of not less than 1 year from the date of violation notice. Perhaps we don't need that part, because I'm just kind of talking this through out loud, because. And then the next part would be if it's revoked by the planning board, it would be ineligible for 1 year. So basically what you want to say is. If you're operating a short-term rental without a permit, you're in violation of town code, grounds for suspension or revocation, right? So then they would get the notice of violation or order to remedy. If they still failed to remedy, then that would just kick it automatically to court. That would be a court
Yep.
appearance thing. Then if there's any issues, it gives the planning board the authorities. Maybe we don't need that from that.
I think you just need to spell out that it's 1 year from the date of revocation, if that's a word even. Not 1 year from the date of violation.
Well, so
Yes.
that's in that second. So any short-term rental revoked by the planning board shall be ineligible for approval for a period of not less than 1 year from the date of revocation.
Yeah, but I think having that in there with the whole description of, you know, when it is in violation might be what's causing the confusion.
Well, I get what John's saying is, so somebody, let's say they're operating a permit without a permit and they come in and want to apply for a permit.
Yep.
Basically, this says they're ineligible to get it for a year.
Or if they're operating as a short-term rental and didn't file for a permit.
Right.
And we catch them,
Right.
Same.
they're ineligible to apply for a year.
Right.
The way this reads.
Right, that's what I'm saying, if we struck that and shall be deemed ineligible for receipt for a short term rental for a period of not less than 1 year from the date of violation. Well,
It's the date of revocation, not the date of violation, really, I think.
two different things.
Yeah, exactly.
How about you replace that line that you're talking about, the one in the middle there, and say, and must apply for a permit upon notice.
It kind of gives them a free ride until we catch them there.
Yeah, because then, well, the first sentence though says operating a short term rental without a permit.
Oh, it's a
Does
phrase.
something.
That's a nice
So John's
phrase.
saying give them a grace period to apply.
Well, no, I don't think, you're not saying give them a grace period, right?
No.
You're just saying that they need to be able to apply for the
Yeah.
application to
Yes.
get the thing once they've been caught
Yes,
Yeah.
and not have to wait a year.
right.
But doesn't that condone that behavior?
Yeah,
Then
it's wait until I catch
Yeah.
or get caught.
Yeah,
But it's tough
Then I can
initially,
apply and everything will be
right?
fine.
Initially, they're not gonna necessarily know unless they're hanging out at our town board meetings. So
Well, but
that's-
we've
Well,
sent
they're gonna be
letters to all of
notified.
them. They know.
Yeah, or they could be a new buyer
There could be a new buyer, yeah.
and might not know about it.
But aren't we going to go to the short-term rental people and say,
Yeah,
Mhm,
they'll all
yeah.
get these notices that, you know,
so that's,
And
Okay, so let's say,
let's say somebody falls
I'm
through
okay
the
with that.
cracks.
I agree with that, but now let's say somebody moves in. They're a new buyer
Mhm.
and they buy with the intention of being a short-term rental.
Yeah.
Do we give them some notice that they have to apply for a permit?
oh yeah, you'd have to. You have to
Then
let
that
people
puts the,
know.
then that puts the ordinance or
Mhm.
How do we know
Yeah.
that somebody buys with the intention of
Of
renting?
renting, exactly.
How are we
This-
ever gonna know?
our system will catch that. You guys. Our system will catch that once they start advertising.
Right, so then once we catch them, right through that advertising process, right? Then they're in violation
Right, then they're in
and they might
violation.
not have known.
Right, but that's okay, because they're gonna get a notice of violation in order to remedy. It's required 30 days that they.
Agreed. And I'm comfortable with that.
Right.
But it's just that the way this is written, it doesn't say that really. It just says,
Mhm.
if you're not doing it, you're not gonna be allowed to
For a
get a
year.
permit for a year.
Yeah, again, that's why I go back to, I'm not so sure that section. So if it just said. Any person violating provisions of town code conducting short-term rentals without a valid permit shall be in violation of chapter 220. Any short-term rental permit revoked by the planning board shall be ineligible for an approval for a period of not less than 1 year from the date of revocation. I think that fixes,
I'm okay with that.
because
I
they'll
think it
get the
does.
notice. They know that they have to apply. If they still don't apply, then we light them up with a court appearance ticket because they're in violation of chapter 220.
Correct.
Yeah.
So we strike from and through the period, right?
Correct. Oh, gee.
So then how does that affect I? Because nothing in there says. Not valid, or they're not, and they're ineligible for a period of one year in I. Should we put that into I? Because right now it says for a time period deemed reasonable by the planning board,
No, it's 1 year. Right?
but I don't think we say that if we break that sentence.
We don't
We're
strike
not
the whole
breaking that
sentence
whole thing.
Okay,
because it's still 1 year. So if the planning board revokes it, then they're ineligible for a year. to get
Okay.
one.
Or are you saying though that we should say 1 year, so it's the same?
it's a thought, but.
And I think you're saying to move that sentence down to I, right?
No,
No, so what we're saying is in G, where it says town code 220, there'll be a period.
Period.
We'll strike from and all the way through the period after violation notice. And then we're gonna leave in any short-term rental permit revoked by the planning board, ...
Right.
Yep.
That make sense?
Yep.
Yeah,
so let's just talk this out for a second, make sure everybody understands, because I'm not sure everybody does. So we find that somebody's operating a short-term rental without permit. We send them a notice of violation, order to remedy. They still don't do it. We take them to court. It's automatic to court at that point because they haven't fixed the order to remedy. and they're in violation of the whole entire thing. So then it's in the court system. Let's say somebody goes ahead and they apply for a permit and then there's problems later. That's when the planning board
Mhm.
comes in, and then the planning board decides whether or not they're gonna revoke it. And then if they do revoke it, they can't have one for at
That's
least a
under
year.
I.
Right.
And if they do revoke it,
It's a
then the
year.
short-term rental permit shall be eligible for you.
Right.
Again, why isn't that sentence down in I rather than G?
Oh, so you're saying move that sentence there. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
I think that's good.
so 1 year, 1 year.
So you're just saying move
Yeah.
that sentence down to clean that up. Got it.
Yeah, because that sentence applies to a
Because that sentence applies to
Revocation.
revocation instead of operating without a permit. All right, I'm with you. now.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't understand what you.
So the sentence starting with any short-term rental was dropped down to I.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you, Stefan.
But that does mean we have to clean up I a little bit, because
Yeah.
Well, now it's a
Number
period
13.
deemed by the.
You can just make it 13.
no,
No,
because now the planning board doesn't have the discretion.
it's 1 year. Yeah.
It's 1 year.
Mhm.
So let me ask you that. Do you
Yeah,
want
the
the
year.
planning board to have a year, or do you want the planning board to have the?
Well, no,
It says not less than 1 year, so does that mean it could be,
No, but it says the
But
planning
this
board
is-
may suspend or revoke for a time period as
So
deemed
just-
reasonable.
take
I'm
out
just
or
saying, but-
revoke, so the planning board may suspend for, and then if it's revoked, it's a year. So yes.
But let me ask a more basic question, 30,000 foot. Do you want the planning board to have the authority, or do you want it to be a year?
I want the planning board to have authority
Yeah.
when they're in violation. I don't want the planning board involved when they just straight up didn't apply for a permit.
Right, they wouldn't be,
So,
they wouldn't be.
They wouldn't be.
yes, I think the planning board should be
That's
involved
G.
if there's a violation, because the violation might be they didn't post a sign inside their house saying their address. And if that's what their violation is, that doesn't deserve either a permit revocation. That deserves them coming to the planning board and them going, put the sign up, send us a picture, and you can have your thing back next week, so.
or even if that's something that's easily curable, I'd rather just went to the.
Yeah, depending on the
Development
violation,
Office, you don't want to see that. check.
that would come into our determining how long the revocation should occur.
Exactly.
Well, again, if there's a problem like that, they're gonna get a notice of violation or a remedy. If they put up the sign within 30 days, it never goes anywhere.
Mhm.
If they don't, then that's when that would come to the planning board. Right, isn't that what it is, 30 days? Oh, no, no, so order,
Mhm.
yeah.
If the planning board is going to have discretion to determine that time period. It opens them up for
It does.
accusations of favoritism
It
or whatever.
does, that's.
If it's a set number, it's
Right,
town board says it's this, so.
right,
Well,
exactly.
Does that happen if we say suspend and define that as one thing and revoke and define that as something else, or no?
What's the
I
difference?
thought this was gonna be
Well, it
done
says
today,
suspend or
didn't
revoke in there right now, so I'm feeling like they're two different things. I would think you could issue a short-term suspension, or it could continue on to revocation. I would think.
right, you can
I
suspend
think
for 30
to-
days until you put the sign up. Or they do something crazy, like have a big party, we pull the permit for a year. Or
Yeah,
revoke.
depends on the violation.
I mean, I would think it was, if you guys decided to revoke it, it goes directly into the 1 year revocation issue. If you decide to suspend it, then it's up to you to come up with the time frame for that.
If it's revoked, they have to reapply.
Yes,
If it's suspended, they don't have to reapply, correct?
no, that's
Okay.
what I would say.
All right.
That's the difference.
Yes,
Thank you.
exactly. I don't, does that still open up the planning board for?
It does, the
Allegation.
clearer it is, the better it is for the
Yeah.
planning board,
Yeah.
because then you don't have. Because they're gonna have to make decisions based on findings of fact and all that stuff, but you don't want it to be too open-ended.
When the new short-term rental permits are issued, this SUPs, they'll have. What, like, all the conditions. There'll be new conditions listed, right? So if they're in violation of a condition. Then it's suspended or,
That's a good point.
Well, no,
If
it's
that-
it's
if
just
that-
simply they'll get the notice of violation in order to remedy,
and if they don't remedy, then it goes to the.
then it goes to the planning board, right?
So do we put that in there, in here? If any of the conditions of the special use permit are violated, do we need to do that?
No, because it's in,
Usual procedure.
yeah, so.
Okay.
And I guess the planning board has the discretion whether it wants to suspend or revoke. Too. So we could, if it was a minor infraction, I could see a suspension for, 30 days, but a revocation, or if you revoke it, then it'd be a longer time period.
And remember, this is
Revoke it,
only
it's a
if
year.
people
They gotta be
refuse to remedy.
Mhm.
Well, I had that 30-day grace, they had that period to remedy it, and they didn't, so then. They're
Then-
coming to the planning
then it
board.
comes to the
and then
planning
the
board.
planning board would probably say, if it's, you didn't have a sign posted in your house, or you didn't have the address posted in the house. Do it, and we're gonna suspend your license until you do,
Mhm.
or if it's something big party, continuous big parties
To make
violation. of
people
law,
rent.
Then I could see it being revoked,
Mm-hmm.
just thinking out loud.
I know, I really value your opinion on what you think about this as the planning board chair. I mean, does that make sense to you? Is that what you
Yeah, I'm just
would want?
playing it in my
coming
mind,
before
what
your
if-
planning board?
I'm doing all the what ifs.
Yeah.
You'll be presented with one that you haven't thought of,
Oh, of course,
Of course, yeah.
the way it works.
of course. Yeah, people doing cannonballs off their decks.
But what if you go back to what Adeline said, if it's a revoke, and maybe it's not a year, maybe it's not less than 6 months, and then that way. The planning board still has some discretion,
6 months.
but it's not less than 6 months, right?
Mm.
You could say, change the verbiage up, so the planning board could say, okay, you're done for a year. If they wanted to, because it's not less than 6 months,
Yeah, if we get into a revoke, then put a time period
right,
on 6 months, a year, whatever.
whatever it is.
There'd be no discretion, there'd be no, accusation of favoritism.
What do you think?
I almost feel like we're getting into the weeds,
We are.
but I think the point that Terry made is important, that we don't act like there's favoritism.
Mhm.
And, so how do we address that?
I think it's
I
also
think
important.
you started with asking the question, should it be a year or should we leave it up to the planning board?
Right,
And my response to that after hearing this conversation is, it should be a year.
I think it should also be a year, because there needs to be a clear indication of what the punishment for the crime is, so to speak.
Right, the
So that
consequences of inaction.
Yeah, and it's much more clear to somebody, hey, if you don't do this, it's gonna be a year, other than the planning board's gonna review this and tell you what's going on.
Right,
But
exactly.
it's gonna, I mean, if I'm running a business and I see, oh my gosh, if I don't do this, I'm gonna be screwed for a year, I'm gonna be absolutely on top of that immediately, so.
Right, because when you give them a ticket, let's say, right,
Yeah.
and you say you gotta put up your
Here's
information,
$50, I'll see you later, yeah.
and if you don't do it, they're gonna revoke your license for a
Exactly,
year.
yeah.
Yeah, then they're gonna do it, right? So we're only talking about the extreme case where
Mhm.
somebody says, the hell with you, I'm not gonna do it
Mhm.
regardless.
Yeah.
Mm,
And it takes kind of a judicial burden away from the.
Yeah.
the
But we still would have
Planning board.
the option of suspending.
Suspension, yes,
Uh,
which you could use in the case of
So it's
somebody
almost like
who's-
progressive discipline, like you do with the kids. right?
Exactly. Yep.
You don't do this, we're gonna.
Well, I mean, I can see the thing, you've got an absentee owner who's got an absentee permit, the permit comes somewhere, they don't see it, and then they finally only see it when it's coming before you, I can see that, that I can see that.
so what if
You separate
the,
suspension
this,
from
the,
removal.
yes, I think we have to separate it, so I think what it would need to read is. After holding a public hearing and providing notice of such hearing. Any short-term rental permit revoked by the planning board shall be ineligible for a period of not less than 1 year from the date of the application. After providing notice, after holding a public hearing and providing notice of such hearing, the planning board may suspend. And strike or revoke a short-term rental permit for a period as deemed reasonable by the planning board on any of the following grounds. So they would be separate.
Yes.
Revoke would be a
I would
year.
just put suspension first, revoke.
I know. I was trying to figure out how
That's
to
right.
do that because of the 12, because
No,
the
that's-
12 conditions pertain to suspension, not revocation.
Mhm.
So I may have to add,
Oh, I got it.
I'll just have to play with the way it's shown, but I got it. So revoke equals a year, they're not eligible. Suspension based on the 12 things the planning board can determine.
Yes.
So there is flexibility, there is gray for the planning board relative to the 12 items. But
Mhm.
if it's revoked,
It's a year period.
it's a year.
Okay.
And that goes with the property, correct? Not with the owner?
Yeah, but
Those were the
it's,
property.
it, yes.
I'm sure.
So, but it's special use.
Yes, it's operation. Yeah, that's how special use.
Yeah.
There's no labs.
That's my understanding too. I'm
Yeah,
just,
but special use
Same,
permits
yeah.
can be revoked at any time,
They-
right? So the planning board can. You know, if things get out of control, change, whatever, the planning board has the authority, then at that point, it no longer goes with the property. So-
but that, I'm just confirming, that means if my property that I own as a short-term rental has the permit revoked
Mhm,
and I sell it to Shauna
mhm.
and she would like to be operated as a short-term rental 2 months later, she's not able to do that because my permit has been revoked for a year.
Thing, right? She could appeal that to the zoning board and make the case, but yes,
Yes, I'm just confirming.
because that's a
Sorry,
zoning
it's
violation.
bad property reporting.
Oh, let me ask this question. Are we comfortable sending this to the town board with that modification?
I have something I want to bring up. I think.
Yeah, I've
I'm
got
gonna do, so.
minor comment too.
Let's stay on this bigger topic then. Are we, or do we need to see it again?
I would say that, you know, as Doug, if he can remember what he said.
No, I heard it. I make that.
Let it go.
Shauna.
And you got three.
Unless
Yeah, there's 3 of us here anyways.
Okay, you're, so when it comes.
unless
to
there's
you
something
guys,
else that comes up.
Yeah. Okay, so.
For that
okay,
issue, I'm fine. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
I think Tom and I are willing to trust the board members.
He'll show up anyway and tell us whatever we didn't. know. I'm still, I hate to be like the bedroom sleeping area police. I'm still kind of on that again. I see that you've defined bedroom and said C sleeping area. But I feel like, and pardon me, I'm working on 4 hours sleep today, so. I feel like that's not as clear when we talk about, where did it go? Page 3. It's G towards the top, not the lower bottom G we've been talking about. It's always the G's. What's up with that? And I'm still on the 2 bedrooms. So if we are taking sleeping area to mean bedroom, like it says in G, and bedroom to mean sleeping area, then that means that we are counting the lofts, the other spaces and everything else as a bedroom. At least that's how I would read it. Which I don't know if that's what our intent was or not.
So let's just talk that through for a second. So specifically, the reason why I added the definition for bedroom of C sleeping area is because on your floor plans that are submitted and even in the assessor stuff, it uses the word bedroom,
Mhm.
right? But what you have is in short-term rentals, a lot of times, and we see this on the photos, somebody will convert a living room to a sleeping area.
Yep.
Right? And so they'll put bunk beds and everything else in that, right? But the maximum occupancy that you're talking about there in G, authorized by the zoning officer at the time of the permit, notice the maximum occupancy. So when the permit is issued, the permit will include a maximum occupancy, which shall not exceed 2 people per bedroom shown on the applicant's floor plan. So if it's a 3-bedroom house, right, it's 6 people.
Except for you've just defined bedroom as sleeping area on page 1. Which I think puts us in a giant circle of not being sure. So if we're defining bedroom as sleeping area,
But it's New York State code, see on the thing there, which
Yes.
actually define the bedroom and stuff. So I don't think it is a circle. I think it's very clear that it would be a bedroom as defined on their floor plan, because they're gonna have a floor plan that's gonna show. If it's a 3-bedroom house, it's 6. If it's a 4-bedroom house, it's 8. If it's a 5-bedroom house, it's 10, right?
then let's just take. I would rather just take bedroom out of the definitions and just make all of these things. Well. Okay,
I think you have to have, I mean, because you have to have the bedroom, right, is what's gonna show on the floor plan. That's why that verbiage is there. And then we added bedroom because you had brought that up before.
yeah, I know, that's why but I still feel like it's. I understand that New York State code defines what a bedroom is and that each floor plan and each each structure in Encore is going to indicate 4-bedroom house, 5-bedroom house, 2-bedroom house, whatever it may be. I just feel like that would be very confusing to me as a short-term rental if I see bedroom is defined as sleeping area, which is maybe not what that's doing, because you're saying Z sleeping area, but it's kind of implying that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't, just see sleeping area, I mean, that's the. It's like bedroom isn't. Well, it's not defined, obviously, it says see sleeping area, and sleeping area gives that definition.
If
It
they
is-
submit a floor plan that shows the. Living room with a day bed and bunk beds, we count that as a bedroom then, so no. So those beds don't count for the total occupancy,
Right, because it would have.
But it would be a sleeping area.
but that would be a
That's my-
sleeping area.
That's my.
Right, well,
Catch 22.
Gene's a 3-bedroom, 6 maximum occupancy, and they have 10 people there, they're in violation.
So that, right,
I'm gonna pull up the International Code Council definition.
But I think initially when they come in to apply, they say, well, in the basement, we have a hide a bed or pull out couch. And we're gonna call that a bedroom. So that's one of our bedrooms.
Mhm.
And then
But
we've
how
got
many,
3
how
upstairs.
many people are gonna be forthcoming with that information? When they can, make extra money and not,
It's in their ad though, probably.
if you.
Yeah.
Then is that up to us to go and
It
find
says-
it?
It says 4-bedroom house,
Right,
12.
I mean,
whatever,
you know,
yeah.
sleeps.
If they're advertising online,
Yeah.
what if I'm not looking at that site and I don't see that this place has 12 and we got a permit for 6?
Mhm.
So,
Well, is the application itself was asked for the number of bedrooms or sleeping areas?
Yeah, we're gonna have to change that
Yeah,
based
they-
on this.
Application.
The-
gonna be-
And then
There,
they'll
they would
actually have to have a
declare-
floor plan.
They would
Mhm.
declare how many sleeping areas they have,
When
and
you
that
get
would
a-
be the basis of
the assessor,
When you get
That's
a,
my question, Chuck, what you just said. If they're calculating it based on sleeping areas, or if they're calculating it based on bedrooms, that's why I feel like this is,
So,
we know how many bedrooms every house is supposed to have.
so the sleeping area is defined to be a valid sleeping area. The sleeping area shall have appropriate requirements as defined by New York State Building Code. The New York State Building Code goes into quite a extensive thing in terms of definition of bedrooms. But one of the things it requires is that they have a closet.
Closet, I know that, and a window,
So-
egress window.
A living room is not going to qualify as a bedroom or a sleeping area.
Mhm.
Because it doesn't have the closet. Now,
So-
if they convert the living room to a bedroom. And then they come in and do all that and install the closet in it, and blah, 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 then theoretically, yeah, they could.
So maybe under bedroom, instead of see sleeping area, you can say see New York State code, blah, 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 whatever the section is. Or what a bedroom is.
Well, it kind of does, it says
It does.
sleeping area. and
It's sort of,
and that's what it
except for I
says.
think see
So,
sleeping area implies that bedroom and sleeping area is the same. thing.
No, see, sleeping area
I know,
requires you to
fine.
read the entire definition of
Yes.
for sleeping area. And so it's all gonna pertain. So there's no part of it, you can't just cherry pick pieces of it, it's the entire piece. Is it, I really don't think it's gonna be an issue. I mean, we could take the same exact sentence, copy and paste it up above. If that alleviates the thing to be a valid bedroom. It shall have the appropriate requirements as defined in New York State Building Code, but it's the,
That's,
Area advertised.
that says to be a valid sleeping area.
right, that's what I'm saying. You could also
So-
say. See sleeping area, because I think you have to refer to that, because you have people that say sleeping areas, right?
Yes,
Sleeps, whatever.
but that doesn't say, it says to be a valid sleeping area, not to be a valid bedroom.
Mhm.
And then later on, we're referring to it as
A bedroom,
bedroom.
right?
Is, I don't. Am I not clear? Am I?
No, I understand exactly what you're saying, but I don't think it's an issue. We could add or to be a valid bedroom. The bedroom shall have the appropriate requirements as defined by New York State Building Code, if that makes you feel more comfortable, but I think it's redundant, but we can add it.
About sleeping area / bedroom.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
That's-
But it's not the
For
same
those
thing,
people that
because a
are-
sleeping area might be a place where somebody's just sleeping, and a bedroom we're saying is determining your occupancy.
Yeah, but then again,
Low
over,
mattresses. I can see them coming in from.
Oh, yeah, no, I know.
But
then
again, they
have to have
would-
a closet.
They wouldn't be able to because it wouldn't be in New York City.
Unless they put in the basement, they have a, I get a closet where the heater and, but then if it gets in the basement.
It would all
you
have to
gotta
be
make sure
disclosed, right? It would all have to be disclosed on the floor plan. And then so when they submit the application and we see on the assessment records that it's not a finished basement, it's all gonna be invalid anyway.
Mhm. Okay, as long as,
You're gonna discover some stuff.
as long as.
Yeah, I mean,
Man feels comfortable, they can.
nothing we do is going to be perfect.
No,
And
I
we're
get
gonna
that. I
find
just,
things that come up. And if we need to modify the ordinance, we'll modify the ordinance, you know.
I feel
It's a lot
like this is
better
the
we had
biggest
before.
change though, limiting the occupancy
Doug's
based
got-
on the number of
over to
bedrooms.
Yeah.
And that, so I feel like
That's
this needs to be the most buttoned up part of the entire thing.
So then it would say, see, for the definition of bedroom. See sleeping room, or see sleeping area, I'm sorry. And. To be a valid bedroom, the bedroom shall have the appropriate requirements as defined by New York State Building Code.
Sure.
Mhm. That way there's absolutely zero question.
Right, so when they apply, they have to go by that.
Right.
And if they're falsifying it, then, I mean, it's up to us to find that out,
Right.
then they're in violation of that.
And how does this answer the question we had brought up, Lindsay had brought up before, that there are some properties that have more than one structure on them that are sleeping maybe more than 12 people.
And that'd be a
Um,
violation of chapter 220 anyway.
Zoning.
Mhm. They're
Okay,
not allowed to have that.
Headline satisfied?
See,
We'll open it up in a little bit. Are you done?
Yep.
Don,
Is
did you have stuff?
I'm ashamed to say I had the same problem with bedroom and sleeping area.
Okay,
I
good.
know.
didn't we
We'll
just?
On the revocation,
Kill two
where
birds
we,
with one
where
stone.
we had bedroom where I said, shouldn't we have sleeping area, but I guess I
Okay,
understand the code issue.
okay,
And hopefully reasonable people will look at this.
I'll open it up to our guests. Go ahead.
Yeah. I just have a question. What happens when like Encore and the floor plan don't match, but you see like everything's up to code? Say a house was bought with being a 3-bedroom, but Encore says that it's a 2-bedroom and the previous owners didn't get a permit or anything like that. What is the procedure whenever you encounter that?
So let's just talk that through for a second. So it's not so much Encore. We're not
Okay.
necessarily gonna use Encore for that, but we have records in our assessor's office, right?
Mhm.
So say the assessment records and everything is a 2-bedroom, 2-bath house. And maybe somebody added on and they didn't get a permit. You got bigger problems than that. You're not gonna get a short-term rental because nothing, there's no certificate of occupancy for it. So everything is gonna have to come up and meet all of the code. So they'd have to make application for the extension of the house. It would all have to be inspected to make sure it meets code, make sure it was done correctly and everything. And then once the C of O is issued for that expansion, then you could get the short-term
Floor plan
rental,
change.
but until the C of O, that's a much bigger issue. Yeah.
Anyone online have any comments? Okay.
I just have on page 4, 6 and 7 here. One of the reasons that we're spending a lot of time on this is issues that we've had in the past. Are these strong enough to discourage parties and large events that, such as what occurred last year? That I noticed that Ed's not here today, but that was a complaint they had last year about that house on Middle Cheshire Road. Any conduct on a premises which is otherwise not a permitted use. I don't think any place we list parties and weddings and things like that is permitted or non-permitted uses. But parties, events, and loud noises, which result in 2 or more complaints from property owners. Those complaints would have to come in here, I would think, to somebody in order to be recorded as a legitimate complaint.
With formal complaint.
But We don't say in here, no weddings and short-term rentals, no. No parties and short-term rentals, but I'm fine if everybody thinks this is strong enough to. I just wanted to raise that one last time here.
Specifically, what have you done on that property?
There's no violation on
There's
that
no-
property.
Yeah,
There is or was no.
we didn't get a formal
Never had fun.
complaint about it.
Well, Ed,
Well, even so with the current code, I mean, even if we did have a complaint, it still wouldn't be a violation. There's no violation of the current town code of the town of Canada.
okay, I can understand Ed's frustration.
Mhm.
What discourages that kind of behavior in this?
Right, so let's use that again as example. Let's say you got two complaints about that. Let's say they came into Mike. Mike would refer it to the planning board for the planning board to provide notice to the landowner and to the public that they're gonna hold a public hearing on it, and then they would hear the complaint, what's going on and everything else, and then they would be making a decision relative to, I guess, suspension.
So this is all after the fact. Should there be something in here before the fact that said we don't allow this?
Is there a sign?
I thought there was
No, I was just
something at
looking
one
through it.
time.
Yeah, I think there was. I agreed, but I think we did have some fun. with-
I couldn't find it this time, so. It could very well be me though.
Didn't we talk about a party or an event which kind of goes above the occupancy, right? So there's 12 people that can
Yes.
stay.
Mhm.
at the
Oh,
party.
it's number 5H. Assigned, so if they were page 3. It's 5 and it's H, it's the top H. Assign in the short-term rental unit, providing notice to any tenant, the short-term rentals in a residential area in the town of Canandaigua. And the renters should be conscientious of the residents in the neighborhood. All renters are subject to New York Penal Law 24020 or any successor statute regarding disorderly conduct, littering, fires. Comply with any of them.
Stick events in there. I would just put any events, just sort of like one time, you know. Any unapproved events, something like that.
And we don't have a noise ordinance, right?
No, we do.
Correct.
I think it's good. I agree with Terry. I think it makes sense to put it. Before we get to the violation point, to put it in the, this is disallowed, so.
I mean, if they want to have a 12-person wedding and they have 6 bedrooms in the house. Go to it, just keep it quiet, you know,
If they want to go above the occupancy and have a big party
then.
for a day,
Always.
but, and it's over the occupancy and there's no parking and all. Are they gonna have to apply for a permit for that,
Right.
for a party?
Yeah.
How are we gonna, prevent that?
And they wouldn't be able
They
to.
wouldn't be allowed
Wouldn't be
to,
able to.
because no events are allowed, period, at short.
No events are allowed at all, okay, so at short-term rentals, okay.
None that are over the.
Is that stated in here?
I mean, if you want to have a family reunion that's 12 people, have a family reunion that's 12
Right.
people, but that's, you know.
Well, if you stick the word events in there. I mean, disorderly conduct doesn't
Events.
necessarily cover it because it could be very orderly, you know.
I would just put events in.
Yeah. Something that gives that warning ahead of time so that we
Yes.
don't wind up with having to have a hearing and all the,
Mhm.
It is,
and calling you out at 11:30 on a Saturday night.
is it lawful to say that a short-term rental can't have an event that you or I could have? Whether it's a family reunion or a get under 50 people at your house for a wedding party.
I see it as being
Is that
different.
okay?
I think it is.
I just throw that out.
I'm a resident
Doug?
here paying taxes all
You
my
got
life.
different
you know,
rates.
I see it. Also. These things are businesses.
Mhm.
This isn't. That's another thing that's been bothering me a little bit that,
In a residential.
you know, we regulate, we inspect. We look at businesses in the town of Canandaigua. We look at annually, the fire marshal goes in and makes inspections. These are a business.
Mhm.
They're not. It's not a. Most of them don't have a owner occupancy. I mean, it's a business. But we're not regulating it like a business. We're kind of going a little further than we would with a normal resident. I'm, you know, that's fine. I mean, you wanna work with people that own property in the town and understand that.
May I ask,
Lisa.
what's your experience when folks rent a place on the lake? Is it usually or often for a special event like a wedding and retirement, birthday? It's inevitable there are gonna be more people than the number of bedrooms, I'm afraid.
So typically when people do rent, they're either coming for a family vacation or they are coming in for weddings. Wakes are a big thing now.
That
and
they're going to
Going,
somewhere.
they're
Yeah.
going to, and so what we do for all of our rentals is very clearly say no events, no unregistered guests, because you don't want that coming back to your house, like, we don't want events there, like.
Well, yeah, I understand it.
Most homeowners don't want the events, I mean, there's a reason why event places charge the amount that they do, because they're wear and tear and even. So what we tell, and I've been telling Adeline this for years, I'm saying, I'm sorry, it's against code, we can't have any events, and we've been putting it on you
She's just
guys.
been lying.
Yeah,
That's good. It
So-
takes it off your.
yeah, so, you know, we're very happy with the no events, because there are people that do allow events, and then they come back to you saying, well, why is this person allowed? It's like, I don't know, but it sounds like you found a place. Like, we don't allow events.
Okay.
So it would be nice to have it just uniform, because
Yeah.
I know most responsible people that care about their property just don't want that either. And care about the neighbors.
I think actually the place to put it maybe is not necessarily H, but in G. Because we can incorporate it with the occupancy, the maximum occupancy. So I just have to wordsmith a little bit, but notice the maximum occupancy for each short-term rental shall not exceed 2 people per bedroom shown on the applicant's floor plan. No events are permitted, in which case the maximum occupancy is exceeded or something or other like that.
I would
So-
also toss, I like unregistered guests too. I think that's a good point too, that sort of defines events as well.
Well,
So,
but that's not up to us to police. That's not us.
okay.
We don't check the contract and see who is
Yeah.
registered or not.
Got it.
It gets too
Like that.
finite.
Yep, you're
If
right.
somebody brings their kid or something.
And I think, by the way, the comment about, is it okay for them to have events if Terry or I could have an event on our property? I think, so if Terry and I are having a wedding on our property, it's gonna happen once in 30 years, you know? If that's different than if somebody's having, that's different than if somebody said. Okay. 5 years, so we got. But anyway, that's different than creating an event space.
Yeah.
Sure,
It's
I
going to happen,
totally.
you know,
agree. And-
every
and
weekend,
I
so.
understand the distinction.
And I mean, I think events are allowed at event spaces in the town of Canandaigua. I mean, if you've got a restaurant or something that's going through the grant application process for that, that's how you get that if you want that. But that's a very different process than short-term rental, so.
Anything else?
Before we put this to bed,
Oh, no, it's
Okay.
gotta go to the town board now.
Terry brought up a good point, and it's bothers me, and I've been a short-term rental, and we probably all have. These are businesses. And our fee schedule,
Let's talk about fees after.
okay, okay,
Because that's, I think, separate and apart from the ordinance itself. And I agree that we should talk about fees.
okay.
How do we move forward with this particular ordinance? Are we comfortable moving forward with it? As Doug is gonna modify it as we've talked about here? And let it go to the board, or do we need to bring it back here to review it?
Can I
again?
can I just tell you what the changes I heard today? So I'm gonna add no events exceeding the occupancy in G, like we just talked about. So the maximum occupancy will be the maximum, whatever it is. We're gonna strike the part about the ineligible receipt for a period of not less under G. We're going to move the revocation for the year under I. And then we're going to, on the bedroom thing, I'm gonna add N to be a valid bedroom, blah, 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 New York State Building Code.
And you're gonna define suspension and revocation.
That's the,
Are we all comfortable with that?
I am, because
Yeah.
we'll review it in the
Yeah.
town board again too, so.
Okay. So I have a motion to approve as Doug has noted.
so moved.
Second,
All in favor?
aye,
Aye. Any opposed? So moved. Okay, now let's talk about fees.
One question before you move on. I
Okay.
just have a question about pets. We don't allow pets. I know some people do, but if dogs that like aren't registered or have rabies, is that anything that you wanna include any pets that come?
No,
All
we're not a policing agency, right?
right,
Okay, let's talk about fees. Go ahead and open it up, Tom.
Oh, it just. We've all rented places. Short-term. And paid. My recollection is I regularly pay at least 3% some kind of an occupancy tax. Our proposed fee schedule seems too heavy on one side and too light on the other. Maybe we should. For sleeping unit or something, have a sliding scale, because there's somebody that rents for $100 a night. Somebody else is 12 or $1,500 a night. We ought to, and again, that may not reflect the anxiety that the single bedroom causes as opposed to the person with 5 sleeping areas. But I'd rather at least have it reflect the revenue, so
Yeah, but how do you do that, Tom? I mean,
I
some,
don't know
some,
whether we
some
charge.
homes, regardless of whether they're 12 people occupied or 2, might not rent them all year long. So the one with 12 or 6 bedrooms might only rent it once a year, where the one with 1 bedroom might rent it every other week.
Person rents once a year probably won't even know they're supposed to have a permit.
Exactly.
So
And I think
I
that,
don't know, it just seemed inequitable when I looked at.
and I think that the intent of our fee originally was just to cover our administrative costs. And just do the
Single
simple math.
bedroom could be more administrative costs than the,
Right. And it could be, but
I don't know what's fair.
I think keeping that fee is reasonable and as low as possible is the most fair thing, I think.
I think the
And-
only way to slide it is occupancy tax.
And if you had 200 units, which was the ballpark number that we're talking about here in the town. And if we charge them $300 a year, that's $60,000. That would mean that if we got a fee from every single rental unit, we'd be able to hire the equivalent of 1 person here at the town to do nothing but work on short-term rentals theoretically.
I don't think $60 covers. When you get into benefits and all that.
well, we looked at that in the minutes from the last meeting.
Mhm.
We had quite a discussion about this, as we all remember. But you look at, I mean, one of the things I would want to make sure is we get our money back, what we're
At
investing in
least cover. our
terms of
overhead.
software, time and
Yes.
people's part, all of that. We have to, at least get that back. It doesn't have to become a, positive cash flow, revenue stream for the town, but it could be. I mean, some towns do that. Some cities do that, but I understand that argument, and it's, you have extremes. You got a
Yeah.
tiny place, and you got a giant place, paying the same amount. Doesn't seem fair, but
The
Yeah, the
BLN,
tiny place could be more, it's more
but it-
of a pain in the
but
ass.
yeah,
the BLN of it is if you're charging $300 for a place that's renting at least $150 a night, they've covered it in 2 nights. It's not a big deal to their bottom line if they're opening the business, in my opinion. I mean, and if you wanted it to somehow affect one more than the other, that's occupancy tax, because then it's gonna be straight up charging whatever they're renting the space for. And that's gonna just go straight on to the renter as opposed to the owner. But that's also a negative for tourism, you know, in the area, and I think that has to be done by the county, I believe, the occupancy taxes.
We don't want the fee to be a deterrent or. To discourage this.
Hmm.
There are a lot of municipalities that limit. The percentage of
Mhm.
dwellings that can be rented.
But the renter of short-term rental place would probably see an occupancy tax listed on their bill, whereas if it's a fee that's paid upfront by they never see that, so I don't know. Occupancy tax is a discouraging term to people, or, you know, but-
Well, you get stuck, you had no say.
well, you're gonna pay it anyway, one way or the other, but you know, you don't see it if it's hidden in the owner's cost.
It's somewhere.
Yeah.
Lisa, what kind of fee are the owners paying to Airbnb and Verbo? Do you know how that works?
I believe that it depends on how, if you only list on like Airbnb and not have a management company, then I think you pay something like you get 4% and the renter gets 4% gets dinged on both sides. And if you have a management company, then I think you have to pay like 7 or 8%, and then you get dinged
So
basically.
like Finger Lakes Premier Rentals.
I'm not,
7-8%.
right, so if they were there, then the renter would get dinged, the same amount, but the owner would get dinged.
It's a percentage of the rental fee.
Exactly, well, the booking, yeah, and
Okay.
so they,
So it's like an occupancy tax. that
Right.
Kind of way, yeah,
yeah,
okay,
so,
curious.
and then they sometimes work directly with municipalities to just collect that, if you put in, okay. Like if municipalities, I guess you can work through Airbnb and say, if we're gonna put the X amount of tax on it, then they'll just pull it and
It's
send
in
it to you.
Oh,
So,
But Doug, do you know, does occupancy tax have to be a county-wide thing? Could it be in individual townships?
Actually, there's different comptrollers' opinions. I was just looking at. I believe that in order for the town to impose an occupancy tax, we may need special state legislation.
Yeah, I think so too.
There are cases for it where some are, I was just looking though. Yeah, I'd have to dig into that a little bit more. It's definitely not something that could happen as quick as
Yeah.
updating the fee
Fee
schedule.
scheduling.
Yeah. That could be something that could be evaluated down the road. That's gonna take some time. So, I know villages cannot, cities can. I think towns can with special state legislation, but I have to double check that.
I think you're right. So I think there's something in Wayne County right now.
Yeah.
So where are we?
I'd recommend you have a-
Sure, so that's your- I don't know.
Just make a straight up fee that's whatever, I mean.
Simple fee.
$300 and
That
just
makes it easier.
See what happens.
Makes it easier for Mike, calculating it, determining it, collecting it.
I believe what you guys said last time is less than
Yeah.
3 bedrooms, it would be $900 per 3 years or $300 per year, and 3 bedrooms or more. It would be $1,500 per year, 3 years, $500 per year. So it'd be based on the bedrooms.
Do it.
I'm comfortable with $300 across the
I
board.
am too. I think it's easier.
Easier, just
Bedroom,
Yeah, so what we said last time, it was less than 3 bedrooms, so if it's 2 bedrooms,
actually.
it would be $900 for every 3 years. If it was 4 bedrooms, it would be $1,500 per 3 years or $500 per
well,
year.
that was thrown out there as a discussion item.
Mhm, yeah,
And the reality is the town board is gonna set the fee. We're only gonna make a recommendation.
correct.
Okay, never mind.
No, big.
Well, the thing is, though, that if this committee agrees on it.
Yeah.
Kind of have 3 votes.
Yeah.
I think we got more of them.
I like the idea of a simple $300
I do
fee
too.
and just keep it easy and
Per bedroom or just the fee?
just a
Straight
fee.
up for permit.
So based on this, though, it would be $900, right?
$900.
So it'd be
So we're
Three
doing
years.
$900 for 3 years. They're all 3-year permits. So we're not doing any 1-year permits, correct?
Yeah.
So.
That's a permit that runs with the property, not for the owner.
And it's rolling. When they come in and apply for it, it's 3 years from that day.
Right.
So we don't have to wait until January 1st and get
You
bombarded.
don't need that.
Okay. It's fine.
That sounds reasonable. Is everybody else?
Yeah.
I prefer reading.
Nope.
I just went, is everybody comfortable with that?
What, rolling?
No,
Oh,
with the $300. fee.
300,
Yeah.
900
Do it.
triangle.
I'd rather it was more, but I would go with the majority.
Okay, and Adeline, you,
I believe our guest has a
Yeah.
question.
go ahead.
I think 300 is a little low compared to others. I mean, I think 500, but no one would.
You know what?
On that.
Okay. I'd rather be low than high. My own personal feeling, you know, I want to see,
That's fair.
I'd like to see tourism grow in our town. And I think anything we can do to enhance tourism is a positive thing. And I think because other communities are doing 500, they're doing more than covering their costs. That doesn't mean we have to do that. That's my opinion.
Well, I would throw out that I don't think a low fee or a high fee would be, or a higher fee would not be a deterrent, because again, these are businesses.
Maybe not.
And it's nice to encourage tourism. I don't think a higher fee would discourage it.
We can always try it, see if we cover our costs. If we don't, we can always raise a fee. That's town board responsibility.
3 years.
Bring it up again when it
Yeah.
comes before the town board and let's see, you know, if we're.
Like you say, you got a forum here already.
I can go.
But that would be 3 years out.
You got it.
also.
Rolling.
And if we see that we're losing money on this,
Yes,
we've already collected the $900
for the 3 years.
for 3 years. We
Mhm.
can't go to those people until 3 years out to say, hey, we're taking that off.
Well, you could change the fee though, so that any new application coming in. would
Yeah.
pay less. But you're right, once you've issued the 3-year permit,
The
they're
existing
done.
ones
for
are
the-
done. That's a good point.
I'll put it in the middle, 400.
And we're doing the 3-year thing to reduce the amount of labor on the department, correct?
Yeah,
Sure.
3 years.
Yeah.
Okay,
that's what we
That
said.
makes sense.
Yeah.
So. I mean, I'm happy with going in between two, but what, may I ask, Lisa, what are you usually seeing for annual permit fees?
Up in the cities, the Syracuse and Rochester, they're more, they're usually like 5, some are even up to like 800, so. Canada, 100 is very, very low, they were the outlier.
Okay.
Did you hear that, guys? We're very, very low.
100 bucks.
We can fix that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you for your candor.
We done talking about fees?
Yeah.
Okay,
What do we want to set it up with though? I think
What are we
we-
going to recommend to the
What are
town
we
board?
recommending, and then we'll start again in that, in that room, the same conversation. But let's do 4, how's that? Put it in 4. Split the difference.
4. Okay, do 4.
And then
So moved.
we'll see what happens, all right. Moving
That's right. Moving on. So. Either Shauna or Doug, I will leave this next topic up to your discretion. You want to talk about the private roads, or do you want to talk about the site design and development? What's more important to the town?
Well, both.
They're both.
Yeah.
Like the arbitrary.
I think the easier of the two
Is the site design.
is a site design.
Exactly, that's what I was gonna say.
However,
on.
until we get to one point, then we might have some conversation on it. Do we have any comments on this other than the red lines?
I don't have that.
Yeah, I thought that, actually, it was a little bit challenging, I thought, to go through to see the changes and stuff, but. The one thing that I feel like is still that we need to have a conversation about this, Dale and I have talked about this numerous times. You have other municipalities that are requiring the developer to put in basically the road binder. before they can pull their first building permit. And I don't think that's in this still. And I know we've talked about it a couple of times,
Road binder, just.
the
is
base of the road.
Base, it's a base
Yeah.
asphalt.
hard surface,
So
It's not the top coat.
The dedication, but
But what we're saying is prior to the first building
Building
permit being issued, because you have a muddy mess all over the place. You end up with any number of things going on. You've got more and more municipalities that are requiring the binder to be installed before the first building permit is issued, and developers are gonna scream like hell because it's a lot more cost for them up front. But if they're gonna do it in a phasing approach anyway, there's no reason why we couldn't require them to do it for that phase. If the development has 4 phases,
per
they can
phase.
start getting building permits in phase 1, once they put the road in for phase 1, the binder.
I think from a contractor's perspective, that is not the sequence of operations. And let's just take Uptown Landing as an example.
Mhm.
Even phase 1,
Mhm.
a lot of different structures.
Mhm.
And they're gonna require occupancy, or they're gonna ask for occupancy of those structures at different periods of time.
Mhm.
And they're gonna put the utilities in at different periods of time. They're not gonna go in and put, and what you're
For phase,
suggesting,
for the phase, they usually do it per phase.
not always. Depends on how big the phase is and how large it is geographically.
Mhm.
And what you're saying is that you want the developer, the contractor, to put in all the utilities and all the binder for that phase before they get the first building permit.
Yeah, so the binder, specifically the road, not necessarily the water sewer, that'll have to be done like normal.
Well, it depends
But-
on whether it crosses the road or it
Right.
runs under the road.
But that's
or-
up to them to engineer that and figure that out, right?
Yeah.
So what you've got, and take a ride up to Auburn Meadows in Farmington is the perfect example of this. They were required to put the binder in
Yeah.
before they could pull their first building permit for the first house.
So,
And so they put that in, and then they're working off of that. Now, we had the reverse happen in Fox Ridge, where we issued 12 building permits, and people were actually moving into the houses, and it was still a dirt road.
so let's, to that point, let's
Mhm.
talk about that, because I think that's the demarcation,
Mhm.
okay? So why not? To protect against that, say that they have to have the binder in before they can receive a C of O.
Because then somebody builds their house and they're unable to move in and.
Well,
they're-
so here's what
So
happens.
if you get the binder in, then they can move in.
But here's what happens.
Yeah.
So the person has sold their house, right? Here's
Bought their
realistically what's, so they've sold their other house. They're wanting to move into this house.
Yeah.
Interest rates are going up.
Yeah.
Town, you're holding up my C of O. I need a temporary C of O. Okay, here's a temporary C
No
of O.
temporaries until the binder is in.
Okay, so then, Mr. Town Board Member, you cost me an extra $150,000 because
I didn't.
Well, yes, you did.
Your
because I
developer
can't
did
move.
because you didn't put the
But it's the
binder in.
game, it's this constant game, it puts us in the middle of that, we
Yeah.
don't need to be in the middle of it. It's this constant
get-
thing we're fighting with them over.
Yeah, but we're gonna be fighting if you tell them that you gotta put the binder in before you ever
Then-
build a
But
house.
then you're fighting with.
We're
the
fighting with the
builder
developer,
as
not the
opposed
future
to
resident. Right, it doesn't put us in the middle. We're saying, Mr. Developer, you have to put the trails in, you have to put the roads in before you can pull that first building permit. Now, the other thing it may make them do is actually phase it out a little differently. They may break it up into more phases.
Doug,
they could have a
You're talking
smaller
to somebody
phase
who's
one.
done this his whole life. I understand how that process works.
Mhm.
And I just, I don't agree with you. It is out of sequence. It is out of the norm. And
I don't think it's out of the.
I
norm
think
anymore.
if you dictate that binder course has to be in
Mhm.
prior to C of O. I
Prior
think
to the
you're-
building permit, I'm saying.
I
Oh,
understand what you're
okay.
saying. I'm saying prior to C of O. That's where we differ.
Mhm.
You're saying prior to the building permit. I'm
Mhm.
saying prior to
Mhm.
the C of O. I mean, you put binder in, you don't want all that heavy construction equipment running over the top of the binder course. You don't, it's just out of sequence. It's just, you're gonna have backhoes with tracks on them running over a binder course. It's just,
We've had,
It's
I
out of
mean,
sequence.
my
It's totally
neighborhood
out of sequence.
has had school buses running over dirt roads.
I'm not
I
saying
know
that,
that-
I'm not saying
But
that
that's
should
what
happen.
ended up happening, because like my road, for example, my exact street, is two different phases.
So if we're
But it
saying,
wasn't connected to a lower phase, so there are literally school buses, cars, dogs, walkers, walking on a dirt road for 6 years.
yeah,
I
but
mean,
that's a different issue. And I think it is addressed if you say that binder course has to be in before the CFO was issued.
But that's what we
But
have
there
now.
was
It's
nobody
not working.
living in that area. They didn't need a CFO for it because that was an area in between two developed areas, so. I mean, it's really an error of how the phasing was done, but it's the developer had no reason to have to do that. They had no, I mean, there was nothing pushing them to do that other than unhappy residents who they then said, well, that's on the town.
Well,
And then they come and scream at the
That's what
town.
happens, it puts the town in the middle. It's like that.
Exactly.
Yep.
The developer, in my experience, they're never gonna take onus for, this was, this is on their backs, this is their issue. They're gonna always push it back to the town.
I mean, essentially, John, what you're saying is what we have now. We have a situation right now in Fox Ridge where we still have a section that's not paved and the developer's saying, whatever.
Are people living there?
Yes.
Oh, that's. If we issue the CFO, once the binder's down, then how would that happen?
We issued, in that particular case, we issued a temporary C of O. And so you have people, but again, it's put the town in the middle because you've got the future residents saying, you're gonna cost me so much more money. I'm trying to close. Interest rates are going up. I don't have anywhere else to live. I've already bought the house, yada, yada, yada. Or they can't even close on their mortgage. They can't close on a mortgage without at least a temporary C of O. It
And the
just puts
developer
us in the
doesn't care 'cause
middle.
They already sold the property and built
Right.
the house,
Yeah.
they're done. So they made their money on it. They have nothing's pushing them to have to do it.
I do agree that there shouldn't be temporary C of
But
Os,
if
but
you don't have a temporary CFO and people can't move in,
But that's what he's saying. They're not pushing, that messaging is getting to the person that the problem is with the builder. The builder's never gonna admit that they're the problem. The builder's indicating to them, it's the town.
yeah, but
They
if you,
won't give it to
so if the
you.
town's
Sorry.
response is. I can't issue a temporary CFO or a CFO until the binder's in. You need to talk to your contractor or talk to your developers, not.
But I've had
encourage
this
you.
conversation. I've had this conversation, I'm not even joking, 100 times. With the future resident calling, screaming at me, crying, everything else. And I'm saying it's the developer's responsibility to finish it. And they're like, but I'm a town resident.
Yes.
This is my house. I don't have anywhere else to go. I understand that the developer, and they even say to me, I understand that it's the developer's problem, but you gotta do something to help me. I'm a town resident. Instead of putting the burden on the developer up front. It could all be avoided.
Yeah, if they never could even build there to begin with, you can bet they're gonna put a binder down and it'll be, down and ready to go and ready to be plowed. So,
I just, I'm only one person and I just can't agree with it because it's just totally out of sequence, totally out of sequence.
Farmington started doing it and it's actually worked out very well for them. And Auburn Meadows, I would encourage you to drive up and take a look at it. The binder's all in
Austin,
and they're starting to build off of the binder. And yes, there's equipment and they may have to go back and whatever, but it's, the price of doing business,
Well, then the price of that housing goes up.
perhaps.
Could be, yeah.
Of course, it's
But
gonna
so
go.
be
I
it.
mean, it's gonna be, the cost is gonna be passed on to buyer. At the
But
end of the day.
we have issues right now with, we can't plow a road because it wasn't ever really done and then we haven't been able to accept dedication of it. We've had issues where we actually, in Lakewood Meadows, we had to actually go back out and have them redo a whole thing because they wouldn't put the binder in when
They
they were
changed
supposed
Parkway.
to, and then they changed. And I mean, it's just this constant problem.
Our obligation is to the residents and the future residents of the town, not the builders.
And I understand that completely, but at the end of the day, those future residents are gonna pay more for their housing than they're paying now.
Okay, maybe they will, but that's a
That's,
chance you take.
It's
I
better
mean,
that they've got safe housing that's accessible by emergency equipment and accessible by our plows.
that
and-
argument is
Yeah.
the same as if the C of O is issued after there's binder, or they put the binder down ahead of time. So that argument really is the same either way. Right? If emergency vehicle is gonna go there, it's because somebody's living in that house and there's gotta be binder down in order for them to live in that house. So whether that binder's put down pre-construction or during construction. Same answer,
But it comes back to the original question, which is that it's.
which,
it's gotta
and
be
I understand his
on the
question and I don't agree with it. You're not gonna
And they're
convince
not
me
able to-
otherwise.
Has the highway superintendent weighed in on this, Doug?
Initially, we had some conversation. We need to have more conversation about it.
'Cause I know his feelings regarding Factor Edge.
Yeah.
And the issues we had out there. Cause that created a lot of problems with him,
It did.
where if we made the binder being, if we made some of these other issues that cropped up there in drainage be resolved prior to issuing any CFOs, it would have been a much better situation for everybody.
I know his big thing is he wants the binder to sit for at least a year freeze thaw cycle before they put the top coat on. And that type of thing. And that was something that, as I was talking with Ron from Farmington, that was some of the same things they were looking at, is getting it in earlier would also help that, so that the dedication process is a little more straightforward on the back end, but.
And that amendment that was in the revision regarding the dedication occurring before the C of O could be issued, that was Jim's input.
Yeah.
Now, issue of whether we issue building permits prior to binder, that's something that wasn't discussed then, but certainly is being discussed now.
You chased her away.
So I had a couple other quick comments on this as I was going through it. If you don't mind me just talking about those for a second, sounds like we need to have more conversation about whether we're gonna do a binder at time of permit or binder prior to C of O, but you had a schedule in here that modified the pavement widths. So as an example, a town collector road went from 24 feet to 34 feet.
Okay.
No.
The collector's normally a higher volume road. In comparison to a residential street. And I don't think we have a lot of collector roads per se, but.
A subdivision road went from 22 feet to 28 feet. And the right of way width went from 70 feet to 60 feet.
I think part of that, I'm trying to recall, was what page? To allow for complete streets. That we have a road width wide enough that. You can introduce bike lanes and. And I think that was the reason for what that widening consideration.
Okay,
Were those numbers provided by Jim? Do you know, Doug? I remember reading that yesterday.
With Lance was involved.
Lance?
Lance, Shauna, and myself and Jim were the, and
And
Chris
Chris,
were the subcommittee that came up with this draft.
okay. So we thought we needed that to,
Yeah, and that was one of
Comply
the
with the
reasons we did
complete
this in the
streets.
first place, was there was a provision in the comprehensive plan that we go back through our site design criteria to make sure there's nothing in there that can hinder the adoption of complete streets to
Mhm.
our specification. So that was one of the things that we were looking at in this revision, along with other items that either staff or Jim had with the original 2018 version of the regulation.
okay.
So sort of a catch-all.
The other thing I noticed was on page 24. There was an item that said all driveways for lots associated with a major subdivision or phase subdivision shall be fully paved.
yes, we require that.
So my question is. That implies asphalt.
Yes,
What about pavers or concrete?
That's considered impervious, fully paved. You're saying maybe the word should be impervious?
No,
Oh.
just that. Driveway should be completed, maybe, just fully paved implies asphalt. As opposed to, it could be anything besides asphalt.
Well, I mean, we also are encouraging people to use porous surfaces, so that, does that take that away then?
Which is still considered a structure and still is considered
Coverage.
impervious
Yeah.
as part of the coverage, so. The intent is to make sure that we, in a major subdivision, we don't have gravel driveways.
Right.
Right, and the apron is asphalt. We've been really sticklers about that too, that has.
Well, we do allow
definitely-
gravel driveways. Out in the scatters.
Well, out in.
Yeah. But the area between the roadway edge and the right of way line has to be paved, so we're not tracking mud and stone
Right.
out onto the road. This applies to major subdivisions such as a Fox Ridge, something like that, where we require all driveways be paved, because we don't want gravel driveways and.
And I understand that. My only
Yeah, you're
question
saying
is
the word paved.
paved.
Well, I would think we would want to encourage like pavers in a driveway, if somebody wanted to do that, I would think that would be something we want to be
Well,
encouraging.
That's another
Yeah.
discussion we're gonna have on impervious pavement, right?
But I mean, that to John's point, is that paved, I mean, I would think that would be something that would be better than being paved, in a way. So.
But I think once we come up with a standard for permeable pavements, then
Now
it
you
could be
can go in
introduced to these specs, but right now, we don't have anything.
Yeah.
And to just say it'd be porous or permeable,
Mhm.
people are gonna start looking through what's the definition of
What's
porous,
the
and there is no definition, there's no standard.
What if you said finished rather than fully paved?
Finished. I
Gotta be
could,
defined.
I could put gravel down and roll it.
But you're gonna catch that on the planning review, right? I mean, whether they're gravel or asphalt driveways.
Non-dirt.
Why would we want to put more on it on the planning board?
I'm not, this just implies asphalt, that's all. So,
Well, I mean,
It's probably
there
no
are
big
already
deal, but-
concrete driveways and paver driveways and. forest
Again,
paved
if
driveways,
it came
so.
using your concern. If you looked at a plan and it showed pavers instead of asphalt, you
We're not
wouldn't
gonna have
care.
an issue.
No,
We're concrete.
Yeah,
so maybe it's a non-issue.
I got a feeling that just the planning board.
I
would
think we're just
take a
saying we
look
don't
at-
want gravel driveways in
Yeah.
development
Yeah.
or dirt driveways or anything you might see out on a farm.
Yep.
So why don't you just say shall not be gravel or dirt?
No,
And
just
then-
leave it in paved.
No, but really, I mean,
They're
that's,
approving it and they'll know what paved is. They're smart guys.
but they may not always be smart guys, that's what we gotta remember.
Then you fire.
I apologize, I brought that one up.
You know too much.
Next one is roadside ditch piping guidelines, which is page 34, item N. My question is, should there be a note here that says something like unless alternative design submitted by engineers approved by the planning board or something?
It says guideline.
That's approved by highway.
I mean, this is extremely detailed, and my only question was, what if an engineer comes in and says you don't need this much?
You can engineer private road.
I just point out it's a guideline and it'll be.
Where does it say that?
reviewed, Right, the roadside ditch piping guidelines.
This is very specific.
Well, the whole thing
The
is
whole
though,
thing is
the,
specific.
the whole entire document, the planning board has the ability to waive it.
Right.
Because it's site design criteria by then.
You know,
The planning board has the authority by the town code to waive specific portions of this.
Okay,
And something like this, Jim and MRB could be involved, and I'm sure there's flexibility there, so.
Was that something, Chuck, that Lance had weighed in on?
Yep.
so this is a
There was an
guideline that
engineer.
if an engineer brought an alternative design, the planning board can review it and approve it. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, I understand.
Yeah, the whole entire document.
Okay,
Yeah.
that answered my question.
I had one that, if you're done,
I'm done.
the under landscaping, it says all street trees, page
wait.
30,
Page,
sorry. Give me a second, I can tell you. Page 57. It's section 9.3. And I understand the intent. I'm just wondering if the wording needs to be clarified. It says all street trees are to be approved species or approved equal by the town highway and water superintendent, which I get, but the trouble is, once the planning board approves it, any change would mean it would have to come back to the planning board, and this implies, I think, that Jim can tell them, no, change that out for something else.
After the fact,
I think we need to,
switch it.
Right, because
Or-
now all amended site plans,
Right.
landscape plans come back.
Right.
So it should say town planning board rather than town highway superintendent?
well, I get Jim wants to be involved in that decision, but he should be making a recommendation to the planning board before they approve it,
And we don't.
instead of after the
Has
fact.
We don't
has
always
this
get that.
become an issue?
No, but they're trying to make a change. That's why they added this verbiage in here.
Well, I mean, Jim has the opportunity to comment
Yeah.
prior to that,
Right.
but
So, so do you put
No,
prior
Jim- as
to,
busy as he is, he doesn't always get a chance to look at the plans beforehand. Well, we, at planning board meetings, we go over the landscape plan. We check the tree schedule and to make sure that they're not invasive in terms of their plantings. And make sure the caliber is the right size, it complies with our standards.
you just put a note here prior to submission to the planning board for approval?
Maybe, or
Doesn't the
Um,
PRC indicate that or the PRC?
No, that's too early in the process,
Okay.
but maybe we
I
don't.
don't know, are there other changes that need to be made? Because it's not that big of a thing. It's just, I think it needs to state in there somewhere that they need to be installed basically by whatever the planning board is, because any
Well,
change.
and whatever Jim wants,
I don't-
obviously.
Right.
Might not even read that sentence.
Yeah, that's what I'm
We could
thinking.
Take
too.
it out.
Just Drag it, take it back
Take it
out, because it already
It's
said
redundant, I think, you're right,
in the non-red line version
yes.
that everybody's gonna weigh in.
There's probably only a handful of species of trees that are planted.
Right.
I mean, people don't intentionally plant buckthorn or, something like that, so.
Was the intent of it to encourage native species? Is that why that was put in there?
Well, that's what the planning board typically does when
Yeah.
it comes, I mean, that's,
ATV.
Well, on ACV usually,
So
if there's any red flags.
any other comments? How do we move forward with this?
Since
great question.
It has to be adopted by the.
Yeah.
It has
that's
to
what
be
I'm-
endorsed, yeah, it doesn't require a local law, but it.
So we could, it doesn't
Each
need a
of us.
public hearing, correct? We could just
Yeah,
put on the agenda if you're ready
I'd like to keep it moving.
for April.
doesn't this just get approved by Public Works or whatever?
No, it's gotta go to town board.
Town board.
Town board hasn't passed.
Town board.
But it's coming from Public Works, isn't it?
Not
I
really.
think
It's coming from, let's see.
That's Friday, this is ordinance.
The elite site design criteria.
I mean, the whole point of this being done like this is a separate standalone document, is so it's not in code, so it's easier to modify. I mean, you could advance this, and then if we need to make other tweaks, we can just.
Advance it to the board?
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's
Sounds like a
it's a
plan.
guideline that
So it sounds like I'm the only one that is opposed to the binder being put down.
well, that's not in here.
It's not. in
It's not
there.
in yet.
That's
It's gotta be
something we still need to discuss, I think.
All right, so that's not in here?
No, but no temporary CFOs.
No temporary
That's,
CFOs
that's
in
in
here.
here. That's in there. That's the big change.
Well, that was the question.
And no C of O.
No
permanent
temporary
CFOs until
CFOs,
dedication.
No, right.
That's in there.
So what does it say?
Permanent CFOs.
No
prior
temporary
to-
CFOs.
Permanent CFOs prior to dedication. That's huge.
Page
Dedication, not
48, I think.
binder, dedication, because they're not dedicating the road until the road's complete after, that's the whole other layer after binder.
Let me ask that question relative to the temporary CFO. How are you not gonna issue a temporary CFO until that road is dedicated? And the road's only dedicated after it's completed, correct?
Yes.
So then how do you,
Yeah.
how do you not issue a temporary CFO until it's dedicated?
I'm not sure what's. Wish I had it with me.
But roads, I'm trying to recall, Jim and Lynn, roads have been dedicated without the final wearing course.
I don't,
I think so, yeah.
we've definitely had straight up CFOs on binder courses for sure, like permanent CFOs on the
Mhm.
binder course. I've done that myself, so.
So if we issued
There's a
a
wearing
C
course.
of O, not temporary C of O
On the binder.
prior to, I think we have.
We have,
Yes.
I myself have had a permanent CFO on a binder.
All right, so I found it. It's on page 56. It says, prior to issuance of a temporary or final certificate of occupancy, all infrastructure shall have been installed and dedicated where applicable, and the site shall be permanently stabilized. These requirements may be altered or waived by the code enforcement officer with concurrence of the town and highway water superintendent.
Still got that word temporary. See.
And prior to issuance of temporary or final.
Yeah, it's sort of in
Were you trying to eliminate the use of a temporary CFO entirely? I mean, you don't want it in your vocabulary anymore?
So they essentially, here's the thing, when you issue a temporary, you by default issued a final.
Mhm.
There's no way to revoke a temporary,
Mhm.
and the temporary will carry on
Mhm.
indefinitely. There's no recourse at all.
The only
What was
thing
I-
is. In theory, the developer would have to maintain the road
Until it's dedicated.
until it's dedicated.
But they don't. That's the issue that we constantly have. They don't. And then the person says, hey, I pay taxes. And you guys aren't
You're not
plowing my
plowing my
road. Or the school bus won't come down the road because it's not dedicated. Yada, yada, yada.
So they won't deliver my mail.
Once the temporary is issued, the people move into their house, the mortgage
Starts.
closes. It's not like we're gonna go kick somebody out of their house or tell the bank, oh, sorry. You have to refund their money. It's by default, it's a final, and that's why,
Okay.
I mean, the temporaries. I keep having this conversation with
Yeah,
Dale.
what would motivate them to get a final then?
There's no reason.
There is no reason.
Other than they get notices from us, hey, this is still temporary,
But
but we have
it could carry
temporaries
on.
right now.
Forever could, I mean, if that person wanted to sell the house. The prospective buyer, we told it doesn't have a permanent
That's
CFO,
absolutely, that is happening.
so
Yeah,
would
but,
that hold, I don't know.
but we're, yes, but we're carrying stuff on the books. I mean, these are open permits with these temporary CFOs. I don't even know how many we have right now, but it's a lot, so.
And it's because infrastructure hasn't been
Yeah, it's
completed.
because more often than not, it's because the developer hasn't done something that they're supposed to do. Like the other one that we got is the stormwater stuff.
Stormwater
Yeah,
The
bond.
developer went and did stuff they weren't supposed to do
Change the plan.
and.
Yes.
It's-
Clear to me, the pressure has to be on the developer.
Well,
Most of them don't live here, one does, but. On the one that,
Well, what
Yeah,
we're
that's-
saying is.
that's-
Their letter of credits, and they want it, they want their. letter of credit. Hold it.
We start cashing their letter of credits and finish the work ourselves. We may have to.
Yeah, I'm more comfortable with this one than I am with the binder issue, but it's just a question to me, of whether the town will not issue a temporary until everything is complete. That's what this is saying. If that's what the town wants to do.
Why do we have a temporary at all?
Well, that's New York State, but
We don't have to do
essentially,
it.
we don't have to use them.
Well, this is gonna eliminate a lot of temporaries right here.
Correct. Going forward.
Mhm.
So how do
Okay, so we
move?
need a paragraph
I mean,
on the.
I'm okay with giving this a go more than I am with the binder course, but. I mean, we try it. If it doesn't work
Define this, you're okay with doing what?
with this,
The way
Paragraph
56 reads.
with the temporary and the final C of O not being issued until the road is fully dedicated.
This will come up in Pierce Brook.
But-
I can see that comment already.
So you give them Jan's phone number for people to call? No, seriously.
Well, it
I
keeps
mean,
us in the middle. I mean, we're
Yeah, it
definitely
does.
still gonna be in the middle. I mean, it would be
That's exactly-
helpful if the planning board would put this as. You know, require this on the site plan, the conditions up front, this exact verbiage to advertise, hey, you're not gonna get. A temporary C of O, but we're still gonna be in the middle. When the person wants to close on their house. And the interest rates are getting ready to go up and they don't have anywhere else to move, we're still gonna be in the middle.
You're gonna get more calls on this than you are about the binder.
I personally want the binder in there. I mean, that's from my personal experience with the builder in my neighborhood. I can 100% see the reason for that.
But this is gonna generate more calls.
No, from the developer? I mean, it's the only person this is negative impacting is the developer.
No.
Yeah,
You're gonna get,
the homeowner.
you're
gets
gonna
a-
get a lot of the same calls that you were talking about with the binder. With this, the
Yes.
homeowner's gonna call you and say,
Yes,
I bought this
absolutely.
house, I need a temporary C of O.
Right. And we're gonna say we can't because site design criteria won't allow us to.
Right.
issue it.
And if that's what you want,
It still puts us in the middle,
yeah,
How do we get out of the middle?
requiring the binder up front.
Yes,
And the
that's what,
stuff up
Do
front.
that's
that
what
then.
I think we should be doing.
And the infrastructure.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we?
So
do
you're
that?
saying
Make-
require the binder before you allow a building? permit?
Yes, and I would include with that the trails. John, I showed you when we
Yes.
did our little ride, that trail, that ridiculous trail, anything that they're required to do. My opinion, I know you don't agree with me, but my opinion is they should be required to do that before we issue the first building permit. That way, we're not arguing with the future resident.
Lakewood Meadows did not put in a single trail in our huge trail development. They were all done by individual residents, every single inch. And they also built a party house that was not even built
That's right.
as an occupiable space. It was built as a shed, so.
Isn't
But the stuff that
garage?
we're talking about is not in this. I mean, to Chuck's point, you could advance this as a starting point, and then we could have that ongoing conversation.
Or make sure that all planning board resolutions. Where we have conditions, that this, the binder be a condition.
yeah, I was gonna say, or you strike this and put the binder language in.
You could do that.
Well, no, yeah, eventually the binder language should be in here, but I'm saying in the interim until it is. We
Make it
can
like
include,
this.
like, Sunset Ridge.
Mm.
Will be coming up for, phase one, so we could put in there that no building permits will be issued until. The binder
Binder.
course.
I want that in there for my.
In the condition of approval for the final,
From the planning board.
for the planning board. Mhm.
But why not put it in your also? then?
Oh, yeah, I agree, but being the fact it's not in there now, and this,
And Sunset Ridge
It
is,
could be.
Imminent.
Development, yeah.
yeah,
I'm just-
This committee,
belts and suspenders, I mean, we put it in our conditions of approval, and we also have it in the site design. It's just condoning what's in the site design manual.
John, does
Well,
it,
it also gives you. It's in there.
Uh-huh.
So what we're doing is following our site design criteria.
Yeah, it's, we require that the sewer district approve the plans before any building permits are issued. I mean, that's part of our normal conditions that we have in resolution, so this would just be one more condition.
So Chuck, do you need this before our next ordinance committee meeting?
Need that paragraph, or what are you saying, the binder issue?
do you want to
Yes.
look at it one more time? Is that where you're?
So I'm saying, let's put the binder language in here.
Okay.
And have it come before us at the next meeting, and then we can make a recommendation on it. sounds like you have 4-1 vote. So,
Okay.
I was gonna ask you if it changed your opinion, knowing that the planning board has the ability to waive that in extenuating circumstances, because they can waive whatever they want in this.
Yeah, that's an important thing to remember.
I'm waiting.
Where it makes sense, John.
where it makes sense, if the planning board waived it, it makes me feel more comfortable. Has the ability to waive it, makes me feel more
They do
comfortable,
anything in this. They go for it.
knowing that this is a guideline and they can waive this does make me feel more comfortable, so that it, then it puts the onus on, again, the contractor and or developer to say, look, I need this because of X, Y, and Z, and this is what I'm gonna do to help mitigate that. That makes me more comfortable, yes. And if we can modify this language and bring it before this committee next time, it'd be good to have it.
I thought you were comfortable with that language.
I am comfortable
Oh,
with that
okay,
language.
so we're not modifying that.
Not modifying
Okay,
that, no.
we're
We're gonna add the binder language.
Okay,
That a good way to proceed?
that's fine.
Okay.
Yep.
Good.
Just to cover Sunset Ridge, we'll put it in as a condition. I remember that.
Yeah, I'll remember.
Where is Sunset Ridge? That's a new.
That's-
264. It was,
Oh, Okay.
Canada
Gotcha.
Goes.
Gotcha.
What's a single family?
Speaking of Sunset Ridge, can we jump into this other one real
Yeah,
quick?
speaking.
This one?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's something we gotta get clarification.
actually, you know what, let me, here's some extra copies. There's a copy, John, attached to the AR that I just gave you.
That,
Yes, so what this pertains to is the local law that we just did relative to subdivision. So local law 8 of 2022. So essentially, right, so what that says is, in order for the planning board to grant subdivision approval, that all of these conditions have to be met, right? And so that map that's in front of you that you have there, right? So Sunset Ridge is currently one parcel that they are subdividing into 31 new parcels, 31 new houses, right? And so specifically, this is where I come back to 174-19I, which is the local law number 8. It says subdivision of land resulting in the creation of 4 or more parcels. It says along a private right of way shall constitute a major subdivision and shall only be authorized with improvements to create a public right of way pursuant to the site and development design criteria. So my question, I guess, to you is, they've created 31 lots, or they're planning to create 31 lots. Should all 31 lots have to be along a public right of way? Now, whether or not the verbiage is clear, I guess let me just start with that, because we can come back to the verbiage, but is that your intent? I thought that was our intent. I'll just start out there to eliminate the private roads in housing subdivisions, like what we always run into with Hillcrest and the villas and everything else, because inevitably you're going to end up with a town resident at the end of like lot number, I don't know what that lot number is, but that farther northernmost lot along that private right of way, that we're not going to be plowing the snow in front of their house, and they're going to be saying, hey, I pay taxes just like everybody else. Why do I not get the same level of service?
I think it was our intent to do that.
It was absolutely our intent.
Why is it that they want to do this? anyway? What's
This
the,
is cheaper.
More
Yeah,
housing,
I mean,
more
just-
density.
we're just gonna leave it a dirt road?
No,
No.
Private.
Be a driveway.
No.
It'd be a common driveway, shared driveway.
But
What
can't you just prescribe that this, they have to have some kind of common maintenance agreement? We've talked about that.
That's what we said with the smaller ones.
Yeah.
Well, but this law says, that's why I go back to this law says, the intent I thought of the law was anytime you're creating 4 or more lots, it all has to be on a public right of way.
History is
So we
not
got
that
3
they're on.
lots.
No, they're
No, he's
creating
saying
31
the whole
lots.
thing.
Yeah.
Oh,
Count the whole
This is-
thing
this
as
is-
one group as opposed to just that.
This is in every lot
No.
or every lot on the private drive, or the 4 lots on the private driveway have to be a public way.
Well, no, so it's that today this is all one parcel. So they're creating 31 lots.
Right.
So because they're creating 31 lots and it's not an existing, that's where I'm saying. I thought the intent was along It has
This
to be
wasn't an
along a
existing
public right of
road
way.
that they then would have.
Right.
3 houses off of.
This is 31, it's not 3.
Yeah.
Right.
mhm.
I mean, it's part of the whole, it's not. Just don't understand how you could sever
So
those two groups of 3 from them.
they have not been issued, they've not been allowed to subdivide completely yet, right? That's still under consideration, these actual
Yeah, they're-
planning the subdivision of the lot.
Yeah,
Phase one.
There is no subdivision approved yet. I mean,
That's
only
not-
preliminary.
Oh,
Only preliminary. But the-
Going on a long time.
Yeah, I know, so they haven't,
Was-
we haven't actually issued a subdivision yet, so.
Correct.
Why do you think they're doing this stuff?
Greater density.
Meaning what, that they couldn't have these 3?
I think they would end up
They
having
would have
needing
like
one
Yeah.
each. So they would lose 4 houses because they wouldn't be able to probably do those 6. I think they would end up
They probably have 2 total.
2 or 3
Because
total.
they'd have to have another
Yeah.
cul-de-sac.
Well,
they
they
have to
have to
move the
change the
cul-de-sac.
configuration a little bit. Yeah.
So, I mean, the underlying zoning, they don't have enough space to create these? These
No,
6?
Well,
the
it's not-
zoning, no,
it's
they
not
just don't have
zoning.
enough space on the parcel
To the
to
road.
fit it all in,
For the density
for the
that they're trying
density
to
that they
do.
want to get the money.
Again, they're trying to maximize the density.
I thought the issue that I had and the planning board had was somebody has a piece of land and they want to put 4 or 5 lots with a private road. And now we have 4 or 5 lots on a private road and we have them all over the town. And I think with this regulation, we said that if you have 3 lots or less, you can put it on a private road. But if you have 4 lots or more, then you have to make it a public road. So the cutoff was at 3 lots, you could have 3 lots on a private road, but you could have four or more had to be on a public.
Which,
So-
this is 4 or
That's
more.
for-
Well, I mean, but
Because it's
all the
all-
other lots are on a public road.
No, but I
Well,
mean.
because it's currently
the
one
whole-
parcel.
Now, the whole, the cul-de-sac, that is a public, that's gonna be a public road.
Right.
The only thing's private would be the
Well, yeah,
common drive.
yeah,
that
there's
gets
3 here and 3 here.
5190.
But how do you escape that it's 31 altogether? I mean, it's. The whole thing, you have to look at the whole thing, not.
You'd
in
have to
pieces.
subdivide it differently, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's one it's a
It's one
subdivision.
division.
It's, well, it has to be, first of all, by the code. The planning board doesn't have a choice. It has to be a major subdivision,
Oh, yeah, no,
in which case it has to meet the site design criteria for a major subdivision, right? So there's none of this back and forth. That's crystal clear. But it's all currently one parcel and you're being asked to subdivide it into 31 lots. You're not being asked to subdivide 6 parcels separately.
of which
Or 3
25
parcels
lots will
separately.
be on a public street.
So this
It's
is,
one.
Right, if. To the point, to that law that we wrote,
Mhm.
I would see that they'd have to go and subdivide. Where the 3 homes are as a single lot. And then he'd have to break it up into 3 and put them on a private road.
But the only thing is, in this particular case, the planning board has a preliminary overall.
Right.
It's not like,
Right,
you know, they could make that one parcel, I guess, and come back at a later
at a
time.
later date.
But then that gets into segmentation,
Yes.
Yeah,
and that's a violation of state law. So they wouldn't be able to do that either.
can they go to the zoning board?
They could go to zoning board for
For
relief
variance,
from the law,
relief, yeah.
yes. But I don't think the planning board is authorized per the town code to approve this the way it's currently.
I agree.
Now, I do think that we do need to make a clarification on the law and specifically, I think it's a simple. On the law, it's 174-19 lot size and arrangement I, it says subdivision of land resulting in the creation of 4 or more parcels along a private right of way. I think we just need to strike the word private. I think it should say subdivision of land resulting in the creation of 4 or more parcels along a right of way. Shall constitute a major subdivision and shall only be authorized with purpose to create a public right of way pursuant. So that way it doesn't matter.
You should pull the word private out of there,
Yes.
Yeah.
because
I
that's
agree.
almost condoning 4
Yes.
or more. private.
Correct. That is, I think, the piece, as I was going back and forth with Nathan, that word probably should not be there.
And that addresses this whole memo, right?
Yes.
I agree with that.
Is Chris on board with?
No, Chris thinks that they can do this, but I don't know that Chris is thinking about it in this context. I mean, I have no problem filing interpretation and kicking it over to the zoning board, but it's, you know.
So it's to avoid, I had to pull this up because it's to avoid this. This is my neighborhood. Beacon Hill Road, you see on the left there. It's part of a huge, large development. And basically, in order to not do a cul-de-sac on the end of Beacon Hill Road, they created a private drive, which creates all sorts of hassles for the town because everyone else that surrounds them on all sides has normal dedicated roads. And just so they could sell one more house in there, they've now got this random private drive right in the middle of it.
And how many homes are on the private drive?
That's Beacon Hill, it's what, 8, I think, yes.
8.
So they, if they literally had made it 7, it would have been, they could have called the sack it perfectly normally, so, but that's Beacon Hill for me is, whenever I think of these things, I think of Beacon Hill Road, it's perfect there. So,
Okay, and do all the, in that situation, do the adjoining property owners have a collective agreement on maintenance?
well, they would have to, because they call the town every year and ask them why they're not filing.
Mm,
So, no,
They're part of nature.
Did we know about? When this
We
was,
know about this
yeah, when we approved it,
before our time.
Yeah.
Well, that was
The code, yeah.
phase. Yeah,
do we need to make a motion to modify that current
If you would,
Ordinance.
then take out the word private and then I'll.
Private.
delete private? Do I have a motion?
So move.
second,
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? So moved.
I've seen.
what's the reason why they just don't do a continuous S going up through there? Is that wooded section? Second thing?
Hills, woods.
Hmm.
I mean, we went through all that.
There,
Okay,
Very
The
slippery.
original reason was a road.
Well, that's.
Yeah.
Isn't it? It's wet in there, you know, it's a little bit wet and it's steep.
I mean, this is a much better plan.
Much better plan.
Oh.
Well, I know originally there were a hell of a lot more units.
Exactly.
Hmm.
So that one ended up being easier than the site design.
well, we got site design.
yeah, somebody.
Done. We know what we're gonna do with it.
Guess that's gonna be me.
We finally got over short-term rentals.
A very successful meeting.
Good meeting.
Yeah.
Motion to adjourn. Oh, I'll just, anyone want privilege of the floor before we close the meeting? Okay, we had a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.